and this historically unpopular president-elect. Joining us now here in New York is NBC News chief foreign correspondent Richard Engel. Richard.
Good to talk to you.
Might be the story of the century, might be, we don't know.
It is very, very strange, and this has been bouncing around for several months now. There have been a lot of allegations, I would even call them rumors at this stage, that the Russians put together a file on Donald Trump, compromising material, compromising him financially, compromising him personally.
Stuff that he did that was bad, that they had documentation of.
That they caught him on trips to Russia and neighboring states doing nefarious things, and that they have evidence to back it up, and that he effectively fell victim to a Russian trap. This is the allegation, and that they have assembled this file of compromising information on him, and that they're just waiting at any moment to either use it or use it to blackmail him so that he is sort of a puppet. I've heard these allegations for a long time. I've heard very, very specific allegations, times, places, amounts of money, specific activities. I haven't been able to prove any of it.
You've been chasing this story to see if you can document it.
I've called people in Russia. I've called leading experts. I've tried to chase it down in this country. And I'm not the only one. Other reporters have been given this kind of material and have been looking into it and haven't been able to prove it. And I called some of the sources who were sending this my way, and I said, okay, you have this material. You say it's as compromising as it is. Show me the proof. Show me these tapes that supposedly exist. Show me the records of the money that was supposedly paid. All of these things, these allegations that, if true, would be incredibly compromising. So far, I haven't been able to find anything.
So what's interesting? Why is this coming out now, then?
So that's what's the interesting thing. There are lots of rumors. These rumors have been circulating for months now. Why would the intelligence community then today boil it down to 2 pages and drop it like a bomb on President-elect Trump?
Right there. This video took place January 11th, 2017. We've been given this information. Our sources, I've called my sources. I've told them to just give me the data if you actually indeed have this information. And up to this point, January 2017, Donald Trump had just been elected. We have bupkis. The Steele dossier is what they are talking about. When I say Russiagate, the person's name who most likely will come to mind is Rachel Maddow. She has been the trumpet on the night that Trump got elected. She found the sharpest object closest to her, sprawled a D in her chest, and went out there night after night, despite hearing from Engel himself that this was bogus, that this was dropped like a bomb by the intelligence services, that for months this information had been leaked to various press agents, that with intent this was being used as a weapon of sorts, that ultimately his searches has found nothing. That, however, did not stop Rachel Maddow from going night after night after night after night, boosting the dossier, boosting elements of the dossier, information that comes out, being the source for Russiagators. Not necessarily giving similar coverage when the dossier was found to be lacking. The Mueller investigation put a knife in this notion that Trump was working with the Russians. The IG report went that much further to show how unhinged the FBI was in using this bit of nonsense in order to spy on one of the, or you could say former source of the President of the United States, or former person who worked with the President of the United States. Not to mention Crossfire Hurricane was spying on other elements of the Trump campaign. But I hope you get my point. The Steele dossier was found to be lacking in 1,000 different ways with the IG report. And when elements of that report, meaning most of that report, was found to be utter nonsense, full of rumors, even when they went to the sources themselves, the sources that Steele didn't know what the hell he was talking about. He was making shit up. Maddow boosted this document and gave this document life in a way that it should never have been given life. And Engel himself makes the point that This has been leaked, and this has been dropped on us into the public's sphere. The interesting thing about this, it wasn't so much the political ops document. At the time that this was taking place, they did not know that Clinton was the one that had essentially paid for this document and was paying the company in order to push this stuff out. They didn't know that at the time. But what was also taking place is that as Trump was gearing to get into office, effectively, this was being used as a political club. It wasn't so much that the document in and of itself was being leaked, and like I say, the people didn't know that it was from Clinton. It was also that the intelligence services were looking into it. It's one thing if you say Clinton has a political operations document, nobody cares. It's another thing if you say that the intelligence services is looking into whether or not the president of the United States is working with the Russians. That's different. The very fact that the intelligence services are looking into it gives it a level of life and credibility that wouldn't necessarily have been there otherwise if people would have just known this is a political operations document paid for by Clinton, using foreign agents, mind you. On the pages of the Washington Post, there is a takedown of Rachel Maddow, a devastating takedown of Rachel Maddow on this very specific issue, Russiagate, and the amount of life that her show, that she breathed into this particular thing, particularly this dossier. I want to read this, or read parts of this, because this is a brutal, brutal takedown. To give context, Rachel Maddow gets into a back and forth with Michael Isikoff, where Isikoff makes the point that, look, is it fair to say that you went overboard with the way that you talked about this dossier that we have found to be lifeless? Rachel Maddow didn't like that line of argument and pushed back saying, give me a specific instance. Well, I'm going to give you more than one. I'm going to give you like 5. Welcome to the soapbox. My name is Jamarl Thomas. This is the Progressive Soapbox. Guys, if you dig this content, please like, share, subscribe. You can always support PayPal, Patreon. This content is brought to you by you since most of it is demonetized. I'm not going to be long with this video, but I was shocked by this. It was on the pages of the Washington Post. I couldn't believe it. But nevertheless, here it is. Rachel Maddow rooted for the Steele dossier to be true, then it fell apart. And basically the author makes the point that Maddow breathed life into a document that was utterly a political operations document that was there used to attack the president that had no merits to it at all. So he starts here. This is a conversation that Maddow is having with Isikoff. Listen to what's being said here, because it gets good. Isikoff and Rachel Maddow going back and forth on this very specific point. And it gets a bit, let's say, testy, to put it mildly.
Or Trump when this goes to trial in the Senate, because it's going to be really tough to argue on the facts. And the more I thought about it, the defense is going to be you and the millions of people that listen to you about Russia, and they're going to say, look, Rachel Maddow and all our listeners were telling the public, there's this vast conspiracy that's going to be proven, and that Trump was a Russian asset and he was, manipulated, and they had compromise on him. And then we get the Mueller report and it's not in there.
And it proves all of those things, but says we can't charge him.
No. That was about obstruction. It wasn't about the core issues, about the alleged conspiracy between the Trump campaign and the Russians.
Did not rise to the level of a criminal conspiracy.
So if that is in fact the defense, do you accept that there are times that you overstated what the evidence was, and you made claims and suggestions that Trump was totally in Vladimir Putin's pocket and they had something on him, and that he was perhaps a Russian asset, and we can't really conclude that?
What have I claimed that's been disproven?
Well, you've given a lot of credence to the Steele dossier.
I have?
Well, you've talked about it quite a bit. You've suggested it.
I feel like you're arguing about impressions of me rather than actually basing this on something that you've seen or heard me do.
Well, I think we talked about it when I've been on your show, right? Mm-hmm. And I was certainly a part of that. And there are claims in there.
I got to be honest. I can't believe she's denying this. I can't believe, He says you were boosting the Steele dossier, and you were part of this cabal that was there giving life aid to the intelligence services, venerable intelligence services, as if you bow down in this case. But you did that because you wanted to give more credence to the fact that they were looking into the Steele dossier and whether or not that dossier had any credence at all. Now, I guess my point is, this was one of Rachel Maddow's things. She was the key Russiagator. She wasn't one of these people looking on the sidelines. She was very clear in her want for the Steele dossier to be true. And when things came out that she thought could be used to hit Trump on it, she used it, giving credence to that document. I can't believe she's backing away from this. I'm shocked by this, but let's keep going. Isikoff presses his case.
That simply have not held up under the Mueller
What's
report.
been disproven?
Michael Cohen paying off Russian hackers in Prague. No evidence of the P-tape ever surfaced. A well-developed conspiracy of exchange of information about the hacking and dumping operation when, it just... Look at the Roger Stone trial. Go into case next week. Mm-hmm. What's the big headline there? That the Trump campaign was trying to use Stone to find out what WikiLeaks had. If you read the Steele dossier, they would have already known, because there's a regular flow of information about the information that the Russians had and were giving to WikiLeaks. So that there were all these parts. Also, by the way, other things like the Trump campaign had spies inside the inside the DNC. No evidence of that. There's a lot of particulars in there.
There's a lot of assertions there that haven't been.
I hope you get his point. Logically, it doesn't make sense for Roger Stone to exist. If indeed the Russians and Trump campaign were working together, then why do you need Roger Stone? Why do you need this interloper between these things? It doesn't make sense. Either the Steele dossier is right and that back channel already exists, or the Steele dossier is wrong and Roger Stone is a needed asset. In this case, both ended up being false. Roger Stone didn't know squat and is going to jail for it. And yeah, the link between Trump and Russia didn't exist. He's giving her a list of these things that were wrong.
Proven.
No, or have been disproven.
What's been disproven?
Michael Cohen in Prague.
Has been disproven?
Yeah.
How?
The Mueller report said it, and
The Mueller report
FBI
did not know. The
me.
Mueller report said that Michael Cohen denied ever going to Prague.
Right. And they accepted that. And if they had any evidence that he did, and the FBI would have had access to all his phones, laptops, they would have been able to.
She is still going, wow, she's going all in. She's going all in. The intelligence services say, look, no, the trip never took place. And he makes the point to her that you realize if they had any evidence to the contrary, meaning if they could put their fingers on anything and all of the money and access that Mueller had, if they could have found anything, then they would have said, or they would have went further in their investigation of that. They accepted it as false. Maddow, for whatever reason, accepts it as being, at the very least, if not true, still open question. Still open question. Bitter ender.
That's in the Mueller report.
Do you believe he was?
I don't know if he was.
Well, but isn't that?
But here, you're trying to litigate the Steele dossier through me as if I am the embodiment of the Steele dossier, which I think is creepy.
No. I'm not.
I think it's unwarranted.
No.
And it's not like I've been making the case for the accuracy of the Steele dossier, and that's been the basis of my Russia reporting.
Right.
It's just not true. But I also think that you're overstating it when you say there's things in the Steele dossier that have been actively disproven.
Right.
I think that, listen, one of the things that's going to happen with the Beryl Howell decision in terms of the release of the grand jury material is that she said in her ruling, listen, what appears in the Mueller report are assertions, essentially, that Trump had advanced knowledge of what was going to be dumped through WikiLeaks. And one of the things that is described in the Mueller report, where we don't know what the details are because it's all protected by grand jury secrecy, is what exactly Paul Manafort was doing when he was sending Trump campaign strategy information and polling data through an encrypted app to a guy who's associated with Russian intelligence, who's then forwarding to somewhere else. And it would be good to actually know what Mueller was able to pursue there. As far as we know, what we can read of Mueller's report, he says basically, I wasn't able to follow these things up.
Right.
And so does that mean that Paul Manafort report never sent Trump campaign data to Russian intel? No, it just means that we don't understand the implications of it.
Right.
So if you tell me something that I've said on the air or that I've said even in conversation with you that's been disproven and turned out to be wrong, I will absolutely do a correction on it if it's true. But it's just
no. Listen, I'm not trying to give you a hard time.
But you're doing it as my friend, and I understand that's your job.
Yeah, but look, it's the broader point here is that, and listen, I do listen to what those folks on Fox say because I need to understand, where they're coming from, and their general argument is there was all this stuff that a lot of people expected we were going to get from the Mueller report, including criminal charges against a lot of other people besides Trump himself, Don Jr., Jared Kushner, all others, and after 2 years or nearly 2 years, he didn't do it. Now, we can fault Robert Mueller, or we can suggest maybe the evidence on some of this was murkier than we thought.
Well, I think it's also still in process. I mean, literally right now,
her basic argument is, I don't accept what Mueller gave. And look, that's fair. You could not accept what Mueller gave, but I suspect that you don't accept it because you wanted him to get Trump. And he didn't necessarily do the job that you wanted him to do, which was to take down Trump. Isikoff's point here is, look, you push this hysteria more than anybody else. You push this hysteria. And the basic document that you used to do that push was found to be faulty at best. She says if there's anything that I've said, then I will take back. Fair enough. The basic issue with Rachel Maddow is that issues of the dossier that she thought were absolutely awesome, she screamed it to high hilt and wrapped around a conspiracy theory with it. The issues that did not give the dossier a good light, they were never on the air. Meaning, if you were watching her show, what you would come away with is a dossier that seems far more credible than what the dossier actually is. And that's the broad basic argument against Rachel Maddow. And that's the argument that is being pursued in this particular piece. Rachel Maddow makes the point about the document. She'll take it back. Great. So let's go that route. January 13, 2017. And this is 2 days. 2 days after Richard Engel tells her that this thing is uncorroborated, unverified, etc., etc. 2 days, Rachel riffed on her January 2013, 2017 program. I mean, had the FBI looked into what was in the dossier and found it was patently false, they could tell us, right? I mean, the dossier has now been publicly released. If the FBI looked into it and they found it was all trash, there was no reason they can't tell us now. I mean, they're not telling us that now. They're not saying that. They're not saying anything implying that there's more to it than it is. The Horowitz report. The FBI did, in fact, potentially serious problems with the Steele dossiers, with the Steele's reporting as early as January 2017. A source review in March 2017 did not make any findings that would make or alter that judgment. March 2017, Maddow glommed onto recent reporting by CNN and New Yorker to the effect that the United States authorities had confirmed that some of the conversations described in the dossier took place between the same individuals on the same days from the same locations, as detailed in the dossier, according to CNN. The New Yorker wrote that the United States intelligence has confirmed some of the less explosive claims relating to conversations with foreign nationals. The baseline claim of the dossier that the Trump campaign and Russia participated in a towering election conspiracy hadn't yet borne out, conceded Maddow. But even if that is yet uncorroborated in the document, she said, all the supporting details are checking out, even the really outrageous ones. A lot of them are starting to bear out scrutiny. It seems like a new one each passing day. May 3rd, 2017, Maddow cited a CNN report that parts of the dossier passed muster even in federal court, and the dossier was used in part to justify a secret FISA court warrant for U.S. surveillance on the Trump campaign advisor. Thanks to Horowitz, we know that officials misused the dossier in this process fouling, failing to disclose the FISA court, debunking information The Republican claimed today that the dossier has been increasingly discredited. That's not true in terms of the public record about the dossier. In fact, it's quite the opposite. As time goes on, more and more pieces get independently corroborated, Maddow said. August 3rd, 2017, Maddow. Even though the White House and people from the Trump campaign and the Trump administration keep denouncing it as this dodgy dossier, reporters routinely talk about it as unverified and uncooperated. You know what? That's less and less true all the time. The comment followed a Senate Judiciary Committee interview with Glenn Simpson, co-founder of Fusion GPS, the research firm that got Steele to do the dossier. October 5th, 2017, Maddow said that Steele had a lot of the dossier dead to rights. December 8th, 2017, Maddow aired a special report on the dossier. Above all else, we know this about the now famous dossier. Christopher Steele had this story before the rest of America did, and he got it from the Russian sources, said the host, who used the term, quote-unquote, deep cover sources to describe Steele's network. According to the Horowitz report, primary subsource for the dossier told the FBI that the information he or she passed along amounted to word of mouth and hearsay. April 16, 2018, Maddow cited the McClatchy story by Greg Gordon and Peter Stone that special counsel Robert Mueller had evidence that Trump lawyer Michael Cohen traveled to Prague in 2016. The scoop would appear to have supported a key claim in the dossier that Cohen made the trip to meet the Russians for collusive purposes. According to Horowitz's report, the FBI determined that the claim about Cohen's travel was not true. We just heard she doesn't accept that. On October 17, 2018, Maddow played a clip from the Fox News correspondent Catherine Heritage posing questions to Joshua Levy, counsel for Fusion GPS, and his co-founder, pressed on whether the dossier had been substantiated. Levy responded, in part, the central thesis to the first memo Mr. Steele wrote said that the Russians were helping President Trump with the presidency and gave him information to win the presidency. The U.S. intelligence community has found that was the case. Mueller report in April provided a kick in the derriere for backers of the dossier. As Glenn Kessler pointed out in the Post, the central allegations of the dossier, an extensive conspiracy between campaign team and Kremlin sanction at the highest level of involving the Russian diplomat. Effectively, it found it to be false. Several days after the Maddow, I love this. Several days after Mueller report emerged that Maddow addressed not the dissonance between Maddow and the dossier, but a point of possible cooperation. And perhaps his most famous allegation, the dossier claimed that the Trump had rented a suite in the Ritz-Carlton in Moscow and employed a prostitute to perform a perverted ritual for him. It suggested that there were tapes of the show, the better to amass compat against Trump. Now, she used this to try to corroborate this claim, and he used a quote or a footnote in the Mueller document in order to try to substantiate that claim of the Russians having compromising footage of Trump essentially having his bed peed on. This is the part that's most important. With that, the dossier ceased performing its role as a central character on the Rachel Maddow show. On the day Horowitz released the punishing report with all of its assertions about the dossier's dubiousness, Maddow chose not to focus on the integrity of the document that she'd once claimed was accumulating credibility of a nearly daily basis. She said this: the Inspector General debunks that there was any anti-Trump political bias motivating these decisions. He did not. The debunking the idea that Christopher Steele dossier of the opposition research against Trump was the basis for the opening of the FBI's Russia investigation. It absolutely was not. And oh, by the way, there was no spying on the Trump campaign. Here's the thing. Horowitz did not debunk that. Horowitz said he didn't know. When Horowitz appeared in congressional testimony, he was very clear. I didn't know. I couldn't tell one way or the other whether it was incompetence or whether it was intentional bias. The point that the author is making in showing all of these instances where Rachel Maddow boosted the dossier, his point is, you boosted this dossier in all of these instances without dealing with the failings of the dossier. The Horowitz report just kind of pointed out what the FBI was using, the lies, the deceit that was taking place for them to pursue this against Carter Page. But you boosted the dossier that was the basis of that FISA spying. And when Michael Isikoff points it out and puts it to you, you don't want to own it. That's the basis of this. And the fact that this appeared on the Washington Post is just that much more special. I love it. Love it. Love it. Love it. I'm going to put the article at the bottom so you can read for yourself. I'll leave it here. It's not just me that notices that Rachel Maddow flagrantly shamed herself in the way that she pushed this Russiagate stuff. Apparently, it's other journalists. And just so we're clear, Isikoff was one of those people that pushed Russiagate, backed away from it, and became somewhat skeptical of some of the key claims. It's nice that he's taking her to task here. Like, share, subscribe.